Welcome to the Connect Like Minds podcast. I'm your host, Sharryse. I interview people making a difference in their communities and in their creative spaces. Today's special guest is the CEO of Integrity Capital, which is a commercial financial consultancy, and he also holds a leadership position at Hybrid Debt Fund. Welcome to the Connect Like Minds podcast, Dave Kotter.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm excited.
And it's a pleasure to have you on. I'm excited as well. So let's jump right into the interview. Can you tell everyone where you're from?
Well, I'm originally from Salt Lake City, Utah. So I was born and raised up there and then moved to Arizona back in 1998.
Wow. So you've been there quite a while now.
Yes, I have. I've seen
Is
a
it
lot of
safe to say
change.
that you're basically an Arizonian? Is that how you say it?
I am definitely an Arizonian native. There is no doubt about it. I've gone through enough hot summers to call myself a native of Arizona.
Yeah,
For
man.
sure.
It's dry. Have you been to the East Coast?
I have.
So how
Yes.
do you compare the weather from the East Coast to the West? Is it extremely drier over there and hotter, or hotter over here and very humid?
It's very dry here and it's just hot. When you get into places where you walk outside for 5 minutes and
Hmm.
now you need to change your shirt, I'd much rather just take the hot
Yeah,
over the wet and hot, which gets pretty ugly.
I believe that. So I am a Marine veteran, and when I was in Cali training during the summer back in like I think it was 2012, man, I don't miss being in the desert. So, I mean, I know Arizona has it's desert out there, but I don't
Yep.
know how bad that was compared to where I was in Cali, but geez, to me, I don't really have a preference. I don't like either. I prefer the fall.
Yeah. I would just like to go into California when it's nice and 70 degrees and
Agree.
enjoy that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lord, for the car. So we can actually get a car and leave when it gets really hot.
Amen to that. So, what type of family did you grow up in?
So I have four older sisters. So I
Wow.
was the baby of the family.
Oh.
Kayleen, Colleen, Charlene, Christine, and then Dave. So I'm not quite sure how they were going to figure that out with an E name. Mom and a dad, great family. They were fun and super engaged. And I'm still going to counseling for all of the four sisters that I have, trying to figure things out.
Are you guys a pretty knit family still, especially you
We
with your
are, yeah.
siblings?
Yep, we were just up in Utah for fall break, visiting my sisters and my mom, and yeah, it's just they're super fun. Lots of laughing, lots of goofing off. So it's very blessed to have a great family, uh, two great parents. My dad actually passed away when I was 18,
Oh wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
it was a bummer, but I had a great dad for 18 years. So super thankful for that.
I love how much gratitude you show. You've done that since we started talking, so that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, pretty thankful.
Were your parents investors at all? Like where did this investing thing come from?
It's a great question. And I would tell you that my dad was a dreamer.
Hmm.
He was a yellow personality. So he was the life of the party. He was always telling jokes.
Hmm.
People loved him. He wanted to be around people. He ignited in me just an excitement, I think, for it, even though I wouldn't call him necessarily an entrepreneur. He did have his own podiatry practice. So he was in the field of medicine.
Okay.
But he told me when I was young, he actually grabbed these blue kits. So they were medical kits and they were these thick plastic. And he gave me about 8 of them. And he said, here's the deal. You need to leave the house and you have to sell all of them. And you can't come home until you sell all of these. I said, okay, I don't even know what that looks like. He said,
Wow.
good luck. So I left the house and I just started knocking on doors.
Hmm.
When you're young, people buy stuff from you.
Yeah, you're a cute little kid walking by. Well, how old were you? How
Yeah,
old were you?
it was probably about 10 or 11.
Wow.
And I just went around the neighborhood and knocked on doors selling medical kits and they bought them. So that really ignited a passion, I think, inside of me, just the excitement of trying to figure out how to make something work and to sell something and watch how that all comes together, how benefits the person buying and also benefits the person that's trying to sell. So that was really my dad in a nutshell, was just over and over again,
Mhm.
him igniting more in me than him being himself, perhaps an entrepreneur.
Mhm.
And I think it just snowballed me into starting a couple different
Do you
businesses.
do you look back, over your life and see how that has played a huge part in how things came together for you now?
Yeah, I do. When you think about it, there's these two elements, right? They always call it the nature versus nurture. You have the nurture side where you're in an environment that's going, okay, we see you, we support you, we encourage you, we want to breathe life into you. And I think that that was a huge part of anything that I have now that seems to be success, really comes from my dad, who was a big cheerleader, big encourager, guy that was very engaged and intentional. And then my mom was very disciplined. She was very much a hard worker. When I came home from school, there was always a checklist of things to do, and then she would inspect it after I was done. So there's a certain way to fold the towels, and she made sure that it was going to be done the right way. So I had a little bit of both of those worlds of just really deep work ethic, and then also just a dad that was super encouraging. Side note, by the way, I'd get up on Saturday morning, always trying to beat my dad by getting up earlier so that I could go play with my friends. Without a shadow of a doubt, he was always waiting right outside the front door with a bag, and he's like, "Good luck, no way, you got chores to do."
What's the
So there
earliest
there
time
was
you were
that.
up?
Oh, I'd get up at 5 o'clock, and my dad was already ready with his rake and bag outside, going, "Nice try."
Um, this is a personal question. Do you have
Yeah,
children?
I do. I have two kids. Me and my wife do, 13 and 10. Girls 13 and boys 10.
Okay, and do you wake up at 5 in the morning with the rake and bag and say, "Here you go"?
Not that extreme. I do wake up pretty darn early to
Yeah.
go more to the gym, but yeah, they have it pretty easy relative, I think, to what I did, at least from my perspective. If you ask them, I'm a meanie sometimes. It's time to do chores. You're a meanie. Okay,
Yeah, I think they're in good hands though. I think they're in good hands. So,
I hope so.
you said you wanted to go outside and play with your friends and you had to work
Mhm.
first before you did that. Were you into any other activities when you were younger?
Oh man, we were so adventurous.
Mhm.
We lived right by a mountain, so we were always playing army or doing, some battlefield thing where we would do war for days, and there would be one side against the other, and we were always trying to capture the flag or neighborhood tag. It was nonstop, paintballs in the mountains. It was just a constant thing outside, which I don't know, everything for me was always just exciting if it felt like an adventure. And that's what I always tried to pursue was, does this seem like it's exciting? Can we build something? Is it fun? And that was my childhood consistently with a friend of mine, Eric Jensen,
Mhm.
who we would just always go out and try to do new things. Sometimes we probably got in a little bit of trouble.
Didn't we all though? Didn't we all? I grew
Yes.
up going outside all the time. Um, my biological father is from Williamsburg, Virginia, and so there's a lot of
Mm,
trees out there. And when I used to go visit my cousins and stuff, we'd be playing in the woods all day, just playing out.
yes. It's a great thing to get your mind going.
For sure, for sure. I think that helped me while I was in the Marines.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. The skills you develop by going outside is big time, and creativity.
Very true. Now I had a chance to check out your bio and I saw that you won 4 out of 5 national rugby championships. Now, was that something that you did in college, after college? Like, when was this?
I was fortunate to be at a high school called Highland High School
Okay.
in Utah, and they had a rugby team, which is a club team called Highland Rugby. And it's been around for 35 years, run by a guy named Larry Gelwicks, who's retired now. And it was a dynasty. He had won, at least the last stats that I looked at, which wasn't that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
He's won 418 games,
Wow.
and he only lost 10 times in 35 years as a coach. Yeah. So pretty interesting dynasty. And I was fortunate enough to get on the team. I played for about 6 years. And, there was kind of like a final year we went into college.
Mm-hmm.
But over those 5 years, we won 4 out of 5 of the championships that he had won over the years. And it was just one of those things you don't understand
Mm-hmm.
when you're playing at the time. But in hindsight, it was just one of those things I went, wow, that was a real blessing to be underneath such a fantastic coach who really poured into our life, more of our character than he did just the sports. And it was a real gift for me to be able to play on that team.
That's really cool. I've only played rugby one time in my life. It was also a college club at my school. I went to UNCW, and
Yeah.
I don't think my body's built for it. So
I
this is
don't know if any of us
me.
is built for it.
Yeah,
It
agreed.
is. Yeah. It's tough.
So like after the first day, I had told my doctor, I was like, hey, I'm thinking I wanted to try this. And she was like, what? No, Sharryse. Let the younger ones do that.
Yeah. I know. When I was 30, I think it was 33 or 34, I'll go play again. And I went and played one game and I thought, it's really not a good decision to
No,
go do this. I'm going to get up injured. And yeah, it's different sport after a while, for
for
sure.
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, were you involved in like band or any other sports while you were in high school?
Yeah. I played football.
Okay.
I played pretty much like football
Mhm.
and then rugby were probably the two core sports. My family always wanted us to play an instrument, and piano was the thing that they wanted us to all play. And I hated it, and I would never practice. And we ended up having a recital where I totally butchered the song. And I remember sitting on stage and they handed out the little, plaques for what you did. And the lady came down and she got to me and she's like, no, you're not getting a plaque.
Well,
There was no participation awards for me at all. Rightly so.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but
What
yeah,
did your parents
those
say about
were
that?
they. I think agreed with her. They said,
Oh,
"Yeah, you didn't practice. You
you
never practiced."
didn't earn it.
I didn't earn it, and I didn't deserve it, and she was right to do that. But
Word.
yeah,
Okay.
so those are probably the areas that I honed in on more than anything, I would say.
Okay, cool. Now, this next segment is called Digging Deeper. And during this segment, I'll ask you some thought provoking questions about your personal life and your career. So, are you ready to dig into that?
I'm ready. I
All
think.
right. Okay. So did you ever consider going to college before getting into commercial real estate? Or did you always know this was something that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I did. I went to college be, again because that's traditional. You go down this path for most people, I would say.
Hmm.
And I struggled with it. I really had a hard time to the point where when I started my company, which would have been, I think it was my junior year, I dropped out and I didn't finish college. And when me and my wife got married, which would be 14 years ago as of October 17th, hope I got that right.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That we actually talked about our values. And one of those values was finish what you start. And we looked at each other and I said, well, I should probably finish college.
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily, from a financial perspective, say that I needed to go back, but I think it was more of the principle of saying, I'm going to finish it.
Hmm.
And it was great. I learned some new skills that I think was helpful. But for me, my eyes were always fixed on starting and running my own business. I didn't really thrive that well as an employee
Hmm.
just because I always had lots of ideas and I wanted to run the show and I wanted to do this. Not that that's bad. It just was more of perhaps a wiring for me. And I didn't do that well in a traditional setting all the way through high school. I really struggled. My mom thought, I'm sure, many times, how's this kid going to function in life?
Oh
As she
no.
just tried to get me through high school. And I think that in hindsight now, she goes, okay, I get it, just wired differently. But a lot of kids struggle with school.
Yeah,
And it
true.
may just be that they have their own particular way that they're wired to do things. So hopefully that answers your question. But
Yeah, yeah, it did, it did. So, for those who might not be familiar, how will you describe what commercial real estate is and how it works?
well, you've got residential and commercial. So residential, obviously buying a home, living in a, single family home or duplex, triplex. When you get into commercial, it's everything above 4 units, and it has to do with the retail center that you and I drive down the street and we see the Target Center, or the big apartment complex we might be living in, or it might be the industrial building in the big industrial park, or the hotel. So everything having to do with non residential is commercial. And people are either buying a piece of land and they're building something, or they are purchasing an existing building that's already done with cash flow, or they're in the middle where they're buying something that's old, beat up, dilapidated, and they're going to rehabilitate it, put new paint and new facilities into it, all with the intention of lifting rents and eventually adding value to it. So that's how I would describe commercial real estate. It's a really fascinating industry to be in.
Okay. And what do you do to help in
Yeah.
in that industry?
I get people into debt. That's what I always tell people. Yeah, I lend money to people and I help developers who are going to acquire these buildings or refinance and rehabilitate buildings that are usually about 10 million or higher for commercial real estate to get debt financing. And we fall right into that space in the in between. We don't do construction.
Mhm.
We don't do permanent. We're doing that bridge loan where someone is trying to buy a building and rehab it, or buy some land and just wait for a period of time. And then we are that bridge between that in order to help somebody get from one side to the other. And we do that nationwide for developers that are seasoned and have been doing it for a while. And we have access to capital to provide them as they go through their journey. So that's what our specific role is, to assist them to navigate and get the best capital for them.
So you said this is for someone who's a seasoned developer. So
Mhm.
if I was just some random Joe who was like, you know
Sure.
what, I got this business plan, I want to start a skating ring up the street, that's
Hmm.
not for that type of person.
Yeah, and I've worked with that early on.
Hmm.
There's different segments. Some people go in and they say, hey, we're going to do financing for the small business owner that's starting for the first time. And there's a whole strand for that. There's SBA financing, there's owner occupied financing for that first time person coming in.
Hmm.
There's also for the investor. Typically, what investors do is they'll start with something a little bit smaller. They'll go, okay, I'm going to buy a fourplex or a sixplex, and I'm going to go ahead and clean it up, and then I'll roll that into a bigger one. So we fall in that place where someone has gone through that first quartile
Hmm.
and they're past all of the challenges, and we're picking them up in that second quartile. If you have four of them, second to third quartile, we're picking people up. And then that last quartile, they pretty much have everything figured out. We're kind of fall in that middle space
Yeah.
for people that are doing it. So first time, there's plenty of opportunities for people, but it's not an area we necessarily focus on.
Okay. Can you tell us the journey about how you first got into commercial real estate and then how it ended up leading you to a hybrid debt fund. Can we talk about
Yeah.
that? I think that'd be interesting. Since you like to go on adventures, I'm sure it'd be an adventure to talk
See, all these gray hairs have a story behind each one of them. Lots of adventures
about.
that I've been on, and they generally cost a lot of money.
Oh man.
The My story is when I was, call it, sophomore year in college, I was starting to look for a job. I took a job as an analyst with Prudential Real Estate Relocation. And about a week after I had accepted the job, I wasn't going to start for a couple of weeks.
Mhm.
I just thought, man, I don't think I could sit behind a desk and crunch numbers all day. That would drive me bananas. So I actually called the lady that hired me and said, look, I know you're going to kill me, but I can't do it. I think it wouldn't be good for you. Probably wouldn't be good for me. And she laughed and said, I kind of thought that when I met you, but I totally get it. So I actually landed that plane and I started looking and I found this ad that said buying and selling commercial real estate loans from banks. And I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And I called on the ad. It was a really wealthy guy that had done well. And he said, look, this is what I do. I have a lot of money. I buy loans from banks across the country and then I trade them. And I said, can we meet? And so we met and I sat down with him. I said, look, I don't know the first thing about your business. I'm super motivated. I said, you could use me from here to kingdom come, but I want to learn the business. So he was gracious, took me under his wing, taught me the business. And for a couple of years, I did that. And it was a wonderful experience for me. It was an education for me to understand that world from a totally different perspective. I didn't like it per se, that side of the business. And so I had been talking with a friend of mine who was in a stock investment club. And him and a couple of us were just talking about starting our own business. And I finally said, I think I'm ready. Let's go. And I'll do commercial, you do residential. And in June of 2003, I quit my job. And actually, he ended up firing me because I told him I'm going to go do my own business. And he
Oh,
said, you're out of here. So I got fired, which was fine. And I ended up starting this back in June of '03 out of my house and picked up the white pages, which is how you made calls back then. I just flipped through to the first person, which was Abbas Accounting, and made a phone call, and the rest is history.
wow. So you did a lot of cold calling. But
I
but
did.
but let's circle back. When you were a kid, you went around to everyone's I
Yeah,
see it prepared you for that.
it did. One of the greatest things I think is to learn sales and put yourself in an uncomfortable situation because you learn to develop a new emotional intelligence. You learn how to develop relationships. And the more uncomfortable you can get in being in those situations, the better you're probably going to do over time if you're willing to stay committed to what it is you're going to do. So it was really great experience for me to have those door knocking experiences. It was, side note, my son who's 10 had his own little spray painting curb business this summer. We had to go knock door to door and do the same thing. So it was fun. I
And
was
is
his
he gonna
employee, but
continue doing it?
he decided no. He had a goal and he hit it. I said, you just got to finish the goal. And he did. And he said, I want to do something different. So he's going to do dog bandanas. So we're looking into that.
Okay, that's really cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I see the entrepreneurship lives on. Look at that.
Passing the legacy.
For sure. Can you tell us about how you got into developing RV parks? That's interesting.
Yeah. So RV parks was, again, it was not on my radar screen. A client of mine who owned a bunch of land up in a little town called Black Canyon City in Arizona, which is this I-17 heading up to Flagstaff.
Mhm.
It's this little town with a place called Rock Springs Pie Shop. It's really famous. And they ship 180,000 pies a year around the country. And he reached out to me and said, I'm going to put a self-storage facility on this property. And I said, I don't know why you would do that. There's nobody around. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. He goes, well, what would you do? And I said, I don't know. But let me bring my partner who is a developer up there and let's see what he thinks.
Mhm.
So we ended up going up to the site, and my partner is a lifelong RVer.
Ah,
And he
cool,
walked
cool.
right onto the site, and with no hesitation, he said that this is an RV park. I went,
Wow.
why? He said, look at all of these RVs around the area. So they're all old, dilapidated, and yet they're packed with waiting lists. He says, we have a superior location with huge traffic. You have a landmark site because everybody knows about the pie shop.
Mhm.
And we went, okay, I get it. And we started doing research. And what I found out, which was really unique, I thought everybody who does RVing is probably in their 60s. And I found out real fast I was totally wrong. It was mid 30s was the average age of an RVer. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is. But I will say my best friend, she lived in an RV and she still has hers. So,
I know.
yeah.
Blew my mind. And I found out the industry is very large, it's growing exponentially. And we said, okay, this is what we're going to do. So we are literally opening our first one January of 2026, which is the Rock Springs RV Park. It could be 137 sites with, which is more of a luxury. So you have a clubhouse and pickleball courts and all this fun stuff. And then we just went under contract on one in South Carolina that we're going to be doing a second location as well. It's in space that we probably want to do 12 to 14 parks in. Just really like the space. I think it's also beneficial because we're going to do some things that'll be more for affordable housing
Okay.
in that space as well. And it really intrigued us. So we like it.
I like it too. That's pretty cool. What part of South
Yeah.
Carolina will this be in?
There's a town called St. Matthews, South
Okay.
Carolina. I think there's about, trying to remember the radius, 30-mile radius, about 800,000 people. It's about 30 miles from Columbia
Oh, okay, okay. I know
is the
Columbia.
general. Yeah. So it's right there, and great traffic, good location. And we're really excited about it. We'll probably do about the same 130, 135 sites. It'll be more of a long-term stay
Hmm.
site because South Carolina tends to be more long-term stay for RV parks.
Okay.
That will be our plan. Yeah.
That's really awesome. When do you all plan on opening the one here in the East Coast?
My guess is because they're already past the approvals and we've already broken ground. This seller has done a lot of work. Unfortunately, his partner passed away when he was going through it. And so they just decided to sell.
Hmm.
But they made some pretty good progress. My guess is by the time we close, which will be probably sometime in January, is our sense, once we get all the things we need to on the budget, it'll probably take about 9 to 10 months to finish off construction and get it prepped and ready. So call it the end of 2026, we would be open and ready to take on new customers.
Wow. Well, I hope I get a chance to make the grand opening, the official opening.
Yes,
Yeah, I
come
definitely
check
want
it
to.
out.
Yeah,
We'll
South Carolina
celebrate
is not too far from me.
live from the studio.
Yes, yes. That'd be awesome. Before we move along from the RV
Mhm.
situation, I have one more question about it. So, what
Sure.
makes a great area for an RV? Because I know earlier you said like landmarks, and
Yeah.
I believe you mentioned something else, but like, how do you know like, hey, this is it for the RV?
Everything comes back to the customer. And the customer really wants to go to a place, and it depends on who they are, something that's going to draw them in and say, this is worth us driving here, parking for at least a week or so to stay.
Hmm.
So the first thing we always look at is what are the draws? Is there water features around? Could someone go down to the lake? Is there fishing that they could do, boating that they could do, hiking they could do? Is there some recreational activity they could do around their biking? For example, in Arizona, there's a huge ATVing place right behind where we're at. Big draw. People love to go back there. Is there some scenic component? that is really attractive to them? And then what's the proximity to other things that might be attractive for them? So we're looking at all the different elements to say, okay, if I'm the person who's going to go over there, if it's more of a short-term stay or transient stay, as they call, then we need to understand what's going to draw them in
Right.
and make them want to stay for a week or so. If it's a long-term stay, we still want to say to ourselves, what are the reasons they would come live here for a while? Are there some amenities around there, shopping, etc., that they can still function in their life and have it still be affordable for them as well? Those are a couple of the things. And then we look at competition. We've been looking pretty heavily in Utah around the national parks, Zions, etc. Part of the problem was it's saturated. There's so many RV parks up there. So we try to take the time to really look at competition and make sure that we're not just another Tom, Dick, and Harry coming in with the same thing, and people are going, well, too many options. So supply and demand starts to happen, the old economic 101. It's
Right.
too much supply, then the prices get driven down.
Right. Okay, that's really cool. Did Integrity Capital come before hybrid, or did that like come after? When did that come into play?
Yeah, Hybrid Debt Fund was birthed at a retreat that we had up in Flagstaff, and Integrity came first. So
Okay.
it's been around for 22 plus years. And we were sitting around as a staff saying, how could we better serve the client? And I've been around for a long time to say the commercial lending industry is very dilapidated, it's inefficient, and it's old. We needed to have a better way. And we said, we want to build something that's institutional. We don't want to just be a private money lender, something that can add tremendous value to the end user, which is the commercial borrower or the developer, and also something that can be a huge benefit to the investor, where they feel like they have a safe investment and they can also get a good return. So that put us on a journey to find this particular product, which is the hybrid product. And there's a couple of life companies that do what's called participating mortgages. So when you lend money, you get a deed of trust, hopefully, on the property. And so when you all of a sudden are borrowing money from somebody, they're going to take a deed against your property, which means technically they kind of own it. Even though they don't really own it, they're the trustee in a sense in it. So what happens is if you ever default or it doesn't work out, they can foreclose. And so we get the opportunity to lend against that project. And then what we do, which is very different from other people, is most people will lend 60 to 70% of the total cost. We will go up to 80 to 90% of the cost. And in exchange for that, we will take a participation in the upside. So that means the cash flow that they take will take 35%. And with the reversion when they sell, we'll take 35%. It's a very unique product that most people don't do because they're either just lending the money and then someone has to raise the equity. We're virtually doing both in a real sense, but we're not their partner. So we're lending the money, we're going up to 90%. They don't only have to raise 10 or 15% themselves. And it's really beneficial for the developer because they don't have to raise as much cash.
Yeah, one of my questions, I know this is not residential real
Sure.
estate, but you know how you have earnest money. Do you guys expect them to have earnest money for this aside from raising the 10 or 15%?
Yeah, what they'll do if they're going under contract, they're going to put an earnest money deposit up into escrow.
And how much is like
And
carry?
it depends. Usually, if someone's buying a property that's 10 or $15 million, they're probably going to put up, my guess is $100,000 into escrow. That's going to get them to open escrow and hold it up there as they go through their due diligence. We expect the person who's borrowing from us to have about 10 to 15% in cash of the loan amount. So if you have a $10 million loan, we need you to probably have about $1 million in cash post putting your equity in the deal. That's what we look at because we want to make sure if an oops happens, which always happens, we need to know that somebody has a little bit of cash to fix a problem if it comes up.
Thank you for breaking that down. I'm pretty sure other people are
Yeah.
like, man, I need some more info. We got you over here. We got you.
Yes. No. Happy. I've had to take a while to learn it myself, so I try to break it down a little bit simpler if I can.
Thank you for doing that. If someone wanted
Yeah.
to get involved in commercial real estate, well, what type of advice would you give them about how to go about
Yeah.
doing it?
My advice for somebody, we do internships at Integrity Capital as well, is do an internship first with somebody, whether it's a commercial broker, or whether it's a bank, or whether it's a debt fund. Get into an internship. And the reason why, and I tell this to interns all the time, people in college or younger, I say, look, you're one of two things going to happen. You're either going to love this at the end, and I'm going to say yes, or you're going to hate it at the end, and I'm going to say yes. Because either way is great because you found out one more thing you either want to do or don't want to do. And you didn't have to invest a ton of time. That is the first thing I would say is try to find someone you can just hop in, even if it's a short period of time,
Yeah.
just so you can get your feet wet and go, okay, now I understand how this works. One of the specific areas that I would tell people to do, and I do this all the time, is go get a job as an analyst where you can underwrite a lot of projects. It's helpful to the person who's trying to do deals. It's helpful to you because you get to see all the mechanics behind the scenes. You get to kind of go behind the scenes of the Wizard of Oz and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And I would also put yourself out there and go bang the phones for somebody and make cold calls. It's just both of those will be beneficial. Even if you don't decide that commercial real estate is the way to go, you will gain some tremendous insight and skills, which is really what you want, skills, in order to take to something else.
Very true. I like that. Thanks for the advice. Now,
Yeah.
how much has your faith led you to make these career focused decisions in your life?
Well, for me, I came into my faith, which is following Jesus, probably about 2010. So I'd say it happened after my career
Hmm.
when my faith really came about. I would say everything changed radically for me in terms of my perspective, my approach, how I saw people, and what I was trying to accomplish. Pre that, everything was just make a lot of money, build a real successful business, and just try to be the king of the hill. That was really my goal and my aim. And post that, it was really how can I serve? How can I take the skills that God gave me? How can I best use them to bless other people at the end of the day? And so the aim was very different. The motive was very different. Not the functionality was still the same thing. I was building a business and doing things.
Right.
But I think a lot of what happens is that the motives behind that start to slowly over time change to say, how can I really invest and pour myself into clients as well as the people that work for me as well?
Hmm.
And all under the guise of love God and love other people. So I would say it informs everything I do in my life for
Yeah.
sure.
How is it for you now? We talked offline. You're an elder. So how
Yes.
has that journey been for you?
A privilege, a hard thing as well, a lot of work, and it gets kind of gritty. But I'm very grateful to serve our local church in that way because I think what happens if you think about people that come into their faith as a body, you're trying to figure out, just like I think in your career too, where do I fit? What is the gifting that I've been given? And a lot of times too will coalesce between just your traditional life plus your faith life, where you'll say, these are probably my skills and how I can best serve the people at my church in the best way I can. And I can assure you it's not singing. That is 100% for sure. Do not put me on stage. That would terrify and clear the house. For me, to be in an administrative position, to be more high level, to be 30,000 feet, and to be able to still serve at the local level too, where I'm dealing with people,
Mhm.
that just really fits like a glove for me to be able to serve in that capacity where I don't have to be at the front. We're kind of behind the scenes, and we're just here to make sure that we're shepherding, protecting, preserving, and making sure that the mission is just moving where it should and not miss the boat of what we should be doing. So I'm very thankful, and it's a gift to be able to serve the Lord and the church in that way.
Awesome. Now, we're going to switch gears a tad bit away from your
Right?
faith, but could you explain why someone would come to Hybrid Debt Fund and how you
Sure.
guys would work with them? And the reason I'm asking is because I want to ask some questions about some, I guess, some words and the definitions of those words.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, there's two customers, I would call it. You have the developer who's trying to borrow the money, and then you have the investor who's investing the money. And a person who's investing with us, which could be, again, a registered investment advisor, could be a family office, could be a high net worth accredited investor,
Mm-hmm.
those people come to us specifically as an allocation for their investments to try to get better risk adjusted returns. And what I mean by that is whenever you invest, people always say, I'm getting a great return. Maybe, but the question really isn't, am I getting a great return? The question is, am I getting a great risk adjusted return? Because you could put money in something and it could have potential to make a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
Probably also means that there's a tremendous amount of risk. Not always, but you need to look at both sides of the coin. What's the downside that I could do? And then what's the upside for me as well? And what we do at Hybrid is to really help protect the downside by having a deed of trust. So that means if something goes wrong, we actually have a piece of real estate that we can go get. And that helps lower the risk for people. Plus, people want cash flow. So we have that ongoing income,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have the upside. So it's a little bit of the best of both worlds, and we fall somewhere in the middle for people's returns. That's why people come to us there, as they know we have a very seasoned, we know how to underwrite, we understand our craft. We're not trying to be everything to everybody. We just have a very narrow niche. And then the reason why people come to us to borrow money is because the developer says, I could get a loan that almost covers everything for me and not have to go raise all this additional equity and give
Mm-hmm.
up more equity. And I get to keep the depreciation and I have one stop shop. Because if you're a developer, it's very hard to go tie up a property, go raise capital, try to get the debt, figure out how you're going to it's just a lot of moving parts, super
Right.
stressful. That's why people come to us to borrow the money as well.
Okay. Now, can you explain what private credit is and how that
Yes.
works?
It's a confusing thing because people just pull up private credit. You hear it all the time. First of all, it's a $2 trillion industry right now, and it's growing dramatically. So it'll probably be close to 3 trillion in the next 5 years. It's a very big industry. As the banks shrink, private credit is growing dramatically. Private credit is anything lending wise that is not a public institution. If you go into a bank, you and I put our money in there because we feel safe, because it says four letters FDIC, backed by the government. And they lend money by a government agency. And so that's public per se. And private is just that. It's everything, could be the hard money lender, could be the private group that's lending to equipment, could be the private person who's lending money to credit cards. So private credit has this global definition of private credit. What we do is private credit commercial real estate. And we always tell people don't get too blinded by just private credit as a whole, because it's a big, wide spectrum of things to do. So that would be the definition of private credit from my perspective.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. What are
Yeah.
some challenges that you went through early that you wish someone would have told you about that you know about now in commercial real estate?
Wow. So many. I would say that the best thing you can do early on is hitch your wagon to people that have been down the road at least 20 years ahead, because it helps you bypass go. If you're playing Monopoly, right? Bypass jail,
Yep.
go across, and you don't have to go through the brain damage. I think the greatest thing that young people can do is to go grab older people who've been in the industry and pay for their coffee and just ask them and be really, really good at asking questions. That would be the thing I would say, is just picking somebody's brain and saying, how would you do this differently if you were me 20 years ago to bypass go? I didn't really do that well early on. I did later.
Mm.
And that's one of my whole things, is just seek wisdom and seek it everywhere you can. But I would have done that a lot earlier, and I probably would have had a few less gray hairs.
I think you know what? I think anyone could apply that to their life. Before I became a journalist, I
Mm,
talked to so many journalists because
mm,
I was very intrigued and I've always wanted to be one. So I was like, how do I get in
yeah.
here? Like,
Yeah,
so I did that for
absolutely.
maybe that's why I have a little less gray hair than you. I have some gray hair.
Yes. You're more wise than I am.
All right. This next segment is called Uncomfortable Questions. And during this segment, I'll
Love it.
ask you either or questions. This is one of my favorite segments, by the way.
I love it.
But after I ask you the question, you have to choose one and you have to explain why you're choosing the answer. So,
Okay.
for my first question, credit or cash?
Cash, which is ironic for a guy lending money. And the reason why is because I experienced credit when the market turned and had to work through that whole thing. And it was painful.
Mhm.
I'm not anti credit, but that's the reason I would say is cash is king when you need margin, when things don't go as well, which will happen.
Okay. Digital marketing or word of mouth?
I would say word of mouth, although I love digital marketing. I'd say word of mouth because if you do a really good job, it'll spread and people talk about it. So I'd say word of mouth.
On the flip side, if you do really bad, people are going to talk about that too.
Yes, they are. It's like my wife ran a, she was a trainer, and the guy who was her mentor said, whatever you do not take somebody who won't eat the right way, because what they'll do is they'll fire you because they didn't get results and then tell everybody about it. So, yeah, good advice.
Cool.
So 100%.
Ending world hunger or ending all wars?
I would say ending world hunger. It's an interesting thing that we have a nonprofit that focuses on the poor and disenfranchised. And one of the real aims for us is to try to expose people who are on the sidelines to really get on in the game of homelessness.
Hmm.
There are we don't necessarily need another facility for the homeless, although I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. But if we just had more people that got engaged,
Hmm.
probably wouldn't need that, because there's a ton of people all over the world who are just not engaged for lots of different reasons. But that's the reason I would focus on that.
Okay. Becoming a business owner or going to college and getting a degree in anything that you want?
Yeah, I think it's a business owner for sure.
I figured you would say that.
Yeah,
And for my final question, American football or rugby?
rugby for sure. Although I might get in trouble for that, but I love rugby. It's such a fun sport to watch too.
Cool, cool. What is your favorite American football team?
Well, mine's by default because my wife is from New England
Oh,
and
okay.
she is a diehard Patriots fan.
Okay. Cool.
So I am therefore a diehard Patriots fan as well.
All right. I am a diehard Ravens fan because I'm from Maryland. So
Ah, I love it.
thank you. Thank you. We're not doing so well right now, but
Patriots weren't as well until recently, which is a little bit of a shocker.
yeah. So the final segment is called Rants with Sharryse. And during this segment, you get to rant about anything that you want. It could be about people not using signal lights, people not bathing, whatever. And then after you decide what you want to rant about, you have to give us a solution to fix the rant. So the floor is yours. Share your rant.
Okay. Well, I've got a lot of rants, but I would say the one honestly is it's affordable housing. It's such a problem and
Mhm.
I run into it daily. Even just for people that make a decent income, you still go, man, things are so expensive. And you watch what people charge for rents and you just go, oh my gosh. My the gal that cuts my hair, sweetheart, and she's like, look, if I want to be on my own and get an apartment and afford it, I have to go to an area that's kind of scary. If I want to shack up with a person, then I have to have somebody that I don't necessarily want in there. And it's just this whole conundrum that you're going, oh my gosh. And so that's just a real frustration that I think everybody's feeling right now, especially for developers who are saying, hey, I want to develop affordable housing. We just can't because it's so expensive to build. That is the number one issue that just keeps punching us in the face every single day. Solution? I would say we're trying to be a part of the solution by doing RV parks that are more affordable housing components. People can come in. It's a lot less expensive for people to come into there. And then we're also going to be doing some manufactured housing projects. I think those are, again, can be great housing for people. Don't even necessarily look like a manufactured housing,
Mhm.
but a lot less expensive for people in order for them to go in there as well. I think that's probably one solution for people. The other one is collaboration. If people are, we're just very myopic in the United States. We just operate in our silos.
Yeah.
And the more that we can be collaborative and say, hey, let's take all these disciplines, come together, slow down, and say, how could we try to figure this out on a collective basis, including the government as well? We'd probably be pretty surprised as to how much progress we can make. And I'm sure there's people doing it right now. But that would be the other thing I would say. We just miss out on opportunities to collaborate.
That's awesome rant.
Yeah, I got a lot that probably aren't that exciting, but that's definitely the one for sure. And if you're in Arizona enough, you definitely get cut off a lot, which I love. Okay, there we go again.
Here in North Carolina too. Same in North Carolina, man.
Yes.
But it was such a pleasure to have you on today. Before you
Yeah.
go, can you please share your social media and any websites that people
Yes.
can visit?
You can go to hybrid, so HYBRID, debtfund.com. That's our website to go to check us out there for the investor information. And then you could go to LinkedIn and just type in David Kotter, Kotter, like welcome back, Kotter. And you can find me on there as well. And it was such a joy to be on here. So thank you.
Thank you too. And thank you for listening to Connect Like Mind.